Hello and welcome to GoH Talk, a podcast for all things Guild of Heroes. I'm Galgamir, leader of Forest of Sherwood, avid game player and podcast amateur. Firstly, if you are new to the podcast, then thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoy the show, and I do encourage you to listen to our previous episodes if you haven't already. If you like what you hear, then please do subscribe to the podcast. We will be aiming to release one episode a week, focused on a particular topic and aspect of the game. We are of course on social media in all the usual places, email as well if you'd like to write in, details of all that at the end of the show and in the show notes. Now, during the last 2 weeks, I went to work on the spin wheel. For those of you who don't know, it's a wheel I made with all different topics to discuss, but it put a terrible strain on my voice. So I've tinkered with a few things, and added this nifty recording device and a button. So now I can have the
Segment Selector
introduce itself and me not have to worry about it. So, without further ado, let's spin the
Segment Selector.
Pending download.
So it's now been 2 weeks since we've had the pets come to Greyhaven. A lot of the bugs I'd noticed before are now gone. I do still note an issue with minor gem runs, and ads not spawning however. Currently no sight of the PvP arena release, but I think they're waiting for a bigger pool of players to get their pets in order first. No other updates thus far, and I've not heard word or seen anything about an event this month, so currently we're just leveling our new companions.
Segment Selector.
How are you doing?
So this segment works best if people write in. Happy to give shoutouts and help to those currently doing a certain area. Let's hear about your arena killings or how your wars are progressing in the guild. I'll do one for myself this week to get the ball rolling. Currently, I have one pet up to the same power level as myself, another not far off, and the other two are simply being activated. It's certainly saving me a considerable amount of gold having the pets as opposed to hiring other players. However, I do find I need to hire more powerful players occasionally. I have now finally reached power level 40. I'm not the fastest leveler, but I'm slowly getting there and keeping up with the guild.
Segment Selector.
Topic of the day.
So, before we start the topic today, I have a riddle for you.
Riddle me this, riddle me that.
There are 3. You might use 2. You will use 1. More of a hint? Well, today we'll be going way back to where you began. Oh, no, I mean, not that far back. No, that's too far. No, back to the beginning of your character. You get options in the beginning to which you have to make an initial choice. You can either choose being an archer, a warrior, or a wizard. Each class has its own distinct set of moves, a little bit of a different look, and different spell effects and bonuses. The great thing here is you're not left to stick with one class through the entire game. Today I'll be briefly brushing over each class and giving a basic rundown of what makes them unique, and what some drawbacks are as well. In later episodes I will dedicate an episode each to all 3 individual classes. Now, I will be honest and say that primarily I play an archer, warrior secondly, and my wife actually plays the wizard. So as such, wizards for me I'm least familiar with, but I can still give some insight. So we'll start with my most comfortable and of course my lead, archers. Archers are a ranged class with a specialty in bows and quivers as their weapon and stat slot. I refer to stat slot as the offhand item, which does not directly act as a DPS item, but does provide additional stats. The archer has its damage dealt by its bow, whilst its quiver holds a stated 25 magic arrows. Magic arrows themselves provide additional damage, plus the quiver itself can provide additional stats such as evasion, speed increase, and hold up to 2 runes for top level gear. The archer specialises in remaining at range as opposed to close combat. Abilities such as allowing quick movement from one side of the screen to another in an instant allow the archer to take less damage, and can also be a damage dealer from the movement's quake. Another key ability is having a shadow copy of the archer fight by your side for a limited time. That has its own health pool as well, and will put out a little less damage, but it still is quite handy. The shadow remains stationary and will draw aggro from the attacking mobs, whilst you're free to move around undetected and focus on dealing maximum damage. There are also other abilities like Volley, which can provide a large damage area, or AoE, to be targeted. This is great for slowing moving mobs or multiple targets. Some Volley can also introduce a slow, which does reduce movement speed, or could freeze the target momentarily. Other abilities include heavy damage dealing arrow shot, burst abilities which enable the archer to increase their speed and evasion for a short while also. I personally think the archer is the better equipped class in the game. It has a vast amount of utility to look after every situation, provides a lot of different options if you want to play the class a different way, and overall I find they top the charts in terms of arena rankings and general class favour amongst players. Plus, you get to use a cool bow and shoot arrows, and come on. Warriors. Now, the warrior is a close combat heavy hitting tank. Its main damage comes from either its sword or axe, and a shield as a stat enhancement item. The warrior is a class that I find, at low levels and without the right stats and gear, can make the game take longer. Perhaps this is just my experience, but the constant need to chase after your target I find as a massive drawback for the class. I will see the warrior take down everything, but as he must run from one side to the other, either from ranged targets or targets which move at pace, it just takes so much longer. Again, this is what I've noticed in comparison. The warrior does have abilities to reduce this, charge attacks and AoE axe spinning whilst going in circles. The warrior has stun interrupts and heavy hitting melee weapon damage hits. I find in arena this class can be particularly strong. Timed interrupts can certainly cause a DPS loss from the opposing class. A ranged class combined with a warrior in arena is certainly a well-matched team, provided the DPS output is equal from both. Wizard. Now, as said, this is my least knowledgeable class, but again, I have got most of the details from my wife, so this will be handy. The Wizard is a ranged class in the game also. However, it can also be a melee. Its primary weapon is a staff, with the offhand stat item being an orb. Like a warrior, it can provide a shield, of sort, though in a different manner. The wizard at range casts spells and has its staff fire objects. At close range, the staff can be used as a melee item towards hitting targets with. Large AoE spells are very obvious with wizards, from casting large consecration charge around the wizard for damage, to target seeking sparks which fly from the staff. Oddly, I find this class to be the weakest in arena. I've had some very tough opponents, however. The majority, though, they don't seem to be as strong. I would often target the wizard first to take them down, as it was easier, and then whatever class was next. The wizard's orb can provide a bubble around the wizard, which essentially is a shield against attacks. It can absorb damage and stop it from being transferred to the caster. The shield has a percentage and will regenerate over time, so you may run out of shield charge within a fight and be left vulnerable, which is kind of why I find they're an easy target. I chose Archer as a preferred ranged class, as I always like having physical items that perform the damage, as opposed to a caster. I personally don't think the classes are 100% balanced for PvP. For PvE, as mentioned, I think warriors are slower, as they need to move around more. This may not always be the case with the right abilities and gear, however, but I do think archers are the more played class, basing that purely off the numbers I see in arenas. Though you will see other classes there, I find more archers taking the ranks than others. Unless you want to be competitive off the bat, I wouldn't let this phase you. Play what you want, and again, this is only my perspective. A short topic, but again, one to brush over the classes as an intro towards starting off the game, though we are now 4 episodes in. That will do for the short episode this week. It was a little late finishing this one off, so the content was less compared to others, and also late to be released. If you like what you hear and want to write into the show, you can find us on social media. GoH Talk Podcast on Facebook and Twitter at GoH Talk. You can write and comment on the YouTube uploads. Visit the podcast page, anchor.fm/GoH Talk Podcast. You can even send us an email at gotalkpodcast@gmail.com, or perhaps you might even seem like a character in Greyhaven. If you have any suggestions, comments, stories, or anything else you want to contribute, please do feel free to send me a contact. Thanks to Steve DeClifford of Steve DeClifford Music for the opening and closing credits named Acoustic Alchemy. You can find all full tracks of his works on Facebook at Steve DeClifford Music. Links in the show notes. The episodes are hosted in all good podcast locations. Please do subscribe to be notified when new episodes are released. This is Galgamir, signing off from GoTalk. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you next time.